Right, so moving forward, getting these cams out. First thing we want to do is reset the motor to top dead center number 1 cylinder. And the reason why we're doing that is then we know exactly where everything is. Obviously we've been turning this around whilst we're doing the valve clearances and checking everything. So you're just going to turn it around. That should be it. Our EX is on the line. Our intake is on the line. There we go. Yeah, so intake, exhaust, timing mark, all set, we're happy. And yeah, the cams are in the right position. TDC number 1, good. Next, cam chain tensioner we need to remove. So first thing we need to do is undo the little nut off the back. You'll see why in a minute. And then we need to undo, oh, that's the wrong Allen key, these 2 Allen bolts here. There's 1 and there's 2. And now we can undo those bolts and remove the cam chain tensioner. Now when you're doing this, for the love of God, do not get halfway through and then decide you're going to put the cam chain tensioner back in. You'll bugger your motor up. The reason is there's a big spring in here, and as the cam chain wears, this pushes the tensioner out, and it's on a non-return spring arrangement. So I don't know if you'll hear it, but as this comes out, it will click. No, you can't hear it. But trust me, it's clicking as it's ratcheting out. Okay, that's the reason why it's being pushed out. It's because it's on that spring. And there is your cam chain tensioner. Now, that will not go back in. If you fit that back in now, you'll end up knackering the cam chain. What you have to do, this is where you do need a specialist tool. Maybe I should have mentioned that before. In the end of the cam chain, which is what, well, just under that little plug, in the end of the cam chain tensioner, there is there's a slot, and you need a specialist tool to wind that back in. We'll come back to that in a bit. I was going to say you can do it with a screwdriver. No, you can't. You've got to have the specialist tool for that one. Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. Right, so with the cam chain adjuster removed, we are getting into the depths of the engine now. You will notice this is the cam chain. Okay, we need to take off the cam caps, we need to remove the cams, and we need to get this cam chain released. The reason why we need to do all that is to then get to the shims that are underneath the cams. So 8mm, no, I lied, 10mm, and we can start undoing all these cam cap bolts, undo the whole lot. First thing I'm going to do is undo this one here. There's 2 on the inside, and then we can take this little protective piece off that goes over the top of the cam chain. Right, top dead center, on point, we're all good. Let's get on with it. Be very, very careful not to drop this bolt down the chain tunnel. If you do that, do not call me. Right, so that's exposed the cam chain. You can see there's a bit of slack in that chain because we've removed the chain tensioner. That should be tight as anything. Basically all we've got to do is we've just got to work our way across the cams, the cam caps. There's two cam caps, obviously the inlet and the exhaust. They are marked if you have a look on them. One's IN, one's EX. Don't mix them up. And on these ones as well, they've got all numbers on, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's your tightening sequence when we come back to sorting it out. But don't worry about that for the time being. All we need to do right now is start getting them apart. But like I say, I'm going to get a little magnetic pot and then we can just chuck all the bolts and everything in. When removing the cam caps, as long as you just do them a little bit at a time and gradually take the pressure off, you should be absolutely fine. When you come to putting them back on again, you've got to use the tightening sequence. But removing them, you don't normally have to worry about the tightening sequence. Just so long as you do a little bit off each one. You can see that lifting up now. It's starting to come away from the cam. Don't know if you can see that moving up. So the important thing is to gradually get that cam cap to come up. You don't want to take all the bolts out this side and have it all bolted down that side, because these can snap. So that's starting to come out. As you can see now, you've got a bit of space between where the bolt is and the actual cap itself. So, and as you can see, the bolts are quite long. They do take a bit of work to get out, which is why I cheat and tend to use the machine. I don't tend to use a lot of machines, but on things like this, it just makes life a little bit easier. Right. So now I can start getting out the other cam cap. Ooh. Bloody hell. Right, same again, just a couple of turns at a time. That seems to have done it. Yep, we're all loose there. Now these are held in with little dowels underneath a couple of the mounting bolts. So what you have to do is sort of rock them and walk them out. I'll get all the bolts undone first. That's all 20 1 bolts out of that. So now we just need to, let's say, get these cam caps off. Why are you being such a pig? There we are. And you can see the 2 dowels that hold it in place, and that's inlet. So now we just got to do the exhaust. And there we go, that's the exhaust one. I say exhaust. Right. They're looking a bit old and looking a bit manky, but I don't think this bike's had many oil changes in its life. But it's getting a bit of a birthday today, so that's good. Right, so those 2 cam covers are out. So now we can take the camshafts themselves. First thing I'm going to do is get a cable tie. Okay, big cable tie. The reason why we've got a cable tie is, if you come and have a look in here, we've got the cam chain. You can see that's nice and loose now. We don't want that to fall down inside the chain tunnel. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put a cable tie around it, and that's it. We're not going to tie it up, we're not going to make it tight, it's just to stop it falling down that chain tunnel. And now we can remove the cams themselves. So scary bit. What we're going to do, look at that. That's 1 cam gone. Right, that's the intake cam. And then we'll come back and that's the exhaust cam. Again, they should be stamped, they should be marked. Yep, there's intake on that one and exhaust on that one. And now you can quite clearly see the timing marks on them. Because these cam wheels can go on either cam when the bike's being built, they've got intake and exhaust on either cam. So that one's the exhaust one and that one was the intake. So yeah, there you go. Right, we're going to put those in the back of the van, keep them safe. We don't want to drop them, ding them, scratch them. And then we can come back and we can actually get to the shims. Right, so we're 2 hours into this job now. And as you can see, we're down, we've got valve cover off, cams out, and we are actually at the shims. So on this engine, it is a what they call a bucket over shim arrangement. So the shim is actually underneath this bucket here. This is the shim bucket. So what we've got is a little magnet. I'll just clean all the rubbish off of that. Right, little magnet, and what we're going to do is we're just going to pull the bucket off, and in there, that is the shim. Okay, this is the reason why this job takes so long, because that is what you need to change. That's it. So let's come back over here and have a look at this. So that is the top of your valve right there. The shim sits, so if that's your valve, your shim sits on top of your valve like that, and then your bucket goes over the top of it like that. And the clearance we've measured is the clearance from this to the cam lobe that's been rolling around. Okay, so what happens is, as the valve in the head wears into the head, that valve's going to come up. So this needs to be reduced, and once that reduces, that bucket will go back down again, which will increase the gap here. That's what it's all about. So what we need to do is we get our book of measurements that we took earlier on. We measure that shim, which has a measurement on it, 202, but we'll make sure that that's right with a micrometer. So we'll measure that shim, we'll determine what the size was, we know what the size needs to be, so we then put in a smaller shim to increase the gap to get it back into tolerance. Right, so we've got the shim that's come out of this number 4 intake valve. What we're going to do is we're going to check it for size, so it's 2.03. Now number 4 intake valve needs to be 0.09 bigger, smaller. The gap needs to be bigger, so the shim needs to be smaller. So if we go 2.03 minus 0.09, should be 1.94. 1.94. Cool. So that shim gets placed there, and this is a box of shims. So we need, what did we just say, 1.94. 1.94, 1.95 would be good. 1.95 there. So that's our 1.95 shim. Slightly bigger than we want, but that means the gap will be slightly smaller than we need, which is still within tolerance, so that's all good. So that's our old shim. I'm going to put over there. This is our new shim, and so our new shim comes up and goes into the bike, and as you can see there's a recess in the top of the valve there, and then you put the bucket back over the top of it. Done. Simple. He says. Right, one done, 15 to go. We'll go through all these, and then yeah, you don't want to see all that 16 times. So that's how it's done anyway. So what we'll do, we'll do the rest of them, and then we'll come back when we're ready to start putting everything back together again. Here we are a little while later, and we've gone through and we've changed all of the shims in the motor. So they are all now as per our calculations. Obviously we can't check the clearances until we've got everything back together again, but they should be as per our calculations. So to start putting this all back together again, first things first, we're going to check to see if the crank's moved at all, and it looks like it has ever so slightly moved. So I'm just going to line those marks up. Right, so that's all lined back up again. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our cam chain and make sure that's all good. Right, so we're just going to turn our motor over. That's one complete turn, 2 complete turns. So we've turned it forward. It's good practice always to turn the motor in the direction of it travelling. It takes out all the lash in the cam chain and everything. So I'm happy that cam chain's moving nicely. I'm happy that we're on the timing marks. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in our exhaust cam first. So as previously mentioned, it's got exhaust stamped on it, and we know the timing marks were on there because we painted them on earlier on. Ignore the inlet mark. And all we're going to do is we're just going to feed it in from the other side of the bike, and we're just going to loop the cam chain over the top of it. Okay, simple as that. Right now I don't care where that is in relation to everything else. All I wanted to do was get it in there and get the cam chain placed on top. The reason is, once it's in, then you can start faffing around with it. Right, so timing marks, they keep bloody moving, these do. Very, very sensitive. Right, so what we're going to do, the chain runs up, goes around the exhaust that way. This side is where the tension's put on the chain. So this side, the chain doesn't change, basically. So that's the reason why you start with the exhaust. So what we're going to do is we're just going to index that round until we're lined up with our mark on the cam sprocket, and we're lined up with our split on the head casting there. And that's it. That cam, as you can see, is rocking around on these two valves here. And the reason it's rocking around is because we haven't put the cam cap on and we haven't sucked it down. Right, so now we've got that that cam in, and we're happy that that's lined up. I'm going to remove our safety device. Simple as that. Like I say, that's that on there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the intake cam and we're going to get it into position. So again, what I'm doing on this one, I don't really care where the intake cam goes. All I need to do is get it into position like that. Okay, now it's not sat down in the cylinder head yet, okay, because it does need a little bit of force to get it into there. But if you have a look, that's our intake mark, so we know that needs to be around here somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to index that round, do a few turns on it. Right, so that is now indexed round. We're still on our exhaust mark, we're still on the mark on the crank, we're good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop that into place and see where that lands. I think that needs to go around probably 2 more teeth, so I'll just do that now from experience. Right, so let's just pop this into the head. There he goes, simple as that. So let's have a look. The exhaust's lined up. Ugh. Can you see that? I don't know if you can get that on the camera. Intake lined up. So intake, exhaust, crank, we're good. Final check, just have a look at the lobes on number 1 cylinder around here. And the lobes should be pointing out of the engine. And that one's pointing out, and that one's pointing out. So I'm happy that is back and the timing is correct. So now what we need to do is we need to refit the cam covers. So remember, you got those dowels, just make sure they're not going to fall out, because at this point you don't want anything falling into the motor. So that one goes in like so, and then the inlet one, again dowel and a dowel. Goes in like so. And what we're going to do is just going to grab all of our bolts and we're just going to start dropping bolts into the holes. These 2 holes here we're not going to put anything in, but everything else we can just start putting bolts in. Very carefully, we're just going to snug all of the bolts down and gradually again walk these down. Tremendous amount of pressure on these. Keep an eye on your cam chain, keep an eye on your timing. Things can jump, they can move. So what we're going to do we're just going to start off, do a little on everyone. So we're not going mad on each individual bolt, we're just snugging it down. The only reason I'm using this is because time, basically. If it's your first time, don't use a machine, use a normal ratchet. And just take it easy, take it steady. Gradually walk it down. Right, you can see in here the gaps have all closed up compared with the other side. So there's no gap. So I'm just going to leave that exhaust one alone now, and we're just going to, like I say, walk this one down, the intake one. Right. And then finally, we're going to pop in a little cover over the cam chain there. And again, I'm being lazy. Going steady, and this is the most important one. Do not drop it. Right. Okay. They are all just down to basically touching, nothing more than that. Okay, again, check your cam timing, because as you've pulled these cams down and they've settled and moved, this chain may have moved, and all of a sudden, normally the intake is out. So the exhaust spot on, show you the intake again, the intake's bang on, the exhaust is bang on, and we're spot on with our crank. So we're happy on that lot. So what I'm going to do now, for fans of the channel will know, the lesser spotted torque wrench will come out. And what we're going to do is we're going to torque these cam caps down as per the manufacturer's recommendation in the manual. And you'll notice on the cam caps there are numbers. The numbers refer to, you can see 5, 6, 4, 3, 10, 9, 8, 7, 1, 2. They refer to the tightening sequence. Okay, so you can't really go wrong with the old Hornet motor, but I need to find a torque spec and then I can torque all that all down. Sorted. Okay, so cam caps are all tightened down. We've checked the timing again, and we've got to come to the point where we need to fit the cam chain tensioner. Now, as I said, these don't go back. What you've got to do is you've got to remember we undid that a little while ago. This is the reason why. So you take the knot off the back, and you've got a special tool, like a key. And what happens is this part of the key here goes inside and turns on a flat blade, and it will retract the cam chain tensioner. And then this shoulder locates into these grooves and will hold the cam chain tensioner. So if we push it in like so, as you push the cam chain tensioner in, you can turn the key all the way back and then locate it. And once that's in and bolted in, you pull the pin, and it extends and locks into place. Like I say, don't ever try and take one of these half out and then fit it back in again. So, and if you haven't got the key, you can do it with a screwdriver. So what you do is you wind it back, hold it with a screwdriver, and get a friend to hold it with a screwdriver, put it in, try and do the bolts up. No, just get the proper key. Right. So I just popped a very small amount of silicone sealer on it. The holes on these are offset, so they will only go in one way around. So if you come to fit it and you can't get one of the holes lined up, that'll be why. So bit of a fiddle around the clutch cable there. I say, if you've got the correct key, life is so much easier. I wouldn't recommend trying to do it any other way, to be honest. Quick nip on both of those. Now we're ready to pull the pin. Keep an eye on all of your timing marks again, because when we pull this pin, it's going to fire out. These can, as you can see, that's loose at the moment, and they can jump. It's not unknown for them to jump. So we'll pull the pin, you heard the click, and then most importantly, what we want to do is we want to turn the engine over 2 complete revolutions. The reason why you do 2 complete revolutions is 1, to check that all the timing marks line up. 2, it will allow this to expand. If there's any slack in the chain at any point, it will allow it to expand another little click. Now if you that chain's gone tight, but let's just get on the crank and we're going to do 2 complete revolutions. So that's come back up on the timing mark. Timing mark's good, so we can see that there. Look under our hose. Timing mark's good, we can see that there. And we're on our timing mark there. That's it. Engine timed, everything back together, everything happy. The last thing we need to do is just refit. We're going to get a new crush washer, and we'll just refit that in the back of the tensioner there. So if you don't put a washer on it, you will get oil leaking out of this. give it a little nip just to make sure he's all good. Right, last thing, I'm going to pop the inspection cover back on. So that's that back on again, and again, little nip just to make sure he's all good. Right, that's all back together. We'll get the cover on, get it all back together again, make sure we're happy with it, make sure it runs. Okay, so we've just cleaned off all the gasket surface, we're happy with it. We're just going to pop a very small amount of gasket, instant gasket, whatever you want to call it, gasket maker, just on the half moons, just there. Behind here is the only places where you should have any sort of gasket spooge. So that one, I just got to do the two around the other side. The rest of the gasket should seal itself. Like I say, it's just on these little cutouts where they recommend it. Valve cover ready to go back in. That way around. Valve cover going in. And believe it or not, this is one of the easier bikes to do. Just as long as you can get it over the clutch cable. Right. If you're not overly experienced at doing this, you might want to remove the radiator and radiator hose and stuff just to give you a bit more clearance. But you should be able to just, there you go, nicely snug it down. Let's just check the other side. Oh, look at that, perfect. Beautiful. Once it's in place, just give it a good visual inspection along the whole length. They do tend to leak just here behind the radiator fan, which is a total pain in the arse to get to. But give it a good inspection all the way around, make sure you can see the gasket all the way around. So I'm just going to grab a torch. Where are my torches? Thank you very much. I'm just going to go around with my torch. I'm just going to check to make sure it's all looking good. Yeah, that looks all spot on through there. Just come and check this corner of the chain tunnel. Yeah, he's all good. Beautiful. And for people who are going to comment, no, we haven't changed the gasket, because we haven't. Right, top bolts, 6 top bolts, bang them in. Now there is a torque spec for these, 10 Newton meters. I own quite a few Hondas. Every time I have torqued these bolts to spec, I've snapped them on my own height. Yeah, on my own bikes. So I don't torque those to spec. You give them really tight and then you give them a little bit of nip and that's it. So these ones, for some reason, they always snap. Just a word of warning. Okay, so that's that all back together again. What I'm going to do is, with the plugs out and the coils are off it, I'm just going to go, I'm not going to obviously start it, but I'm just going to hit the start button and see if we spin over, any horrible noises, anything like that. So, engine turns over nicely, doesn't come to a dead stop. We can carry on building this one back up. Right, so got 4 brand new NGK plugs to stick in this one. Like I said, we're doing a full service on this bike as well, so remember to subscribe for when that video drops if you want to do a service on your bike. Hit the bell notification and then you'll not miss it when it gets published. But anyway, as part of that service, we're fitting brand new spark plugs into this engine. So that's all 4 of those in. So now you just need to tighten those up. Little tip if you are doing a Hornet number 3 cylinder, absolute pain in the arse to get to. But if you pop the coils off, you got plenty of room up here then to get your plugs sorted. Anyway, we'll get these in and then we can start refitting all the coils, refitting all the other stuff that was missing from here, and then we can start to, we can go for a start, which would be good, and we can look at carrying on with the full service on this one. Right, so that's a brand new set of plugs in. Let's carry on building this top end up. Right, so all back together again. We've just put a test tank on it because we're going to be carrying on servicing this one. So what we can do, key on, bit of choke, go for a start. Brilliant. There we go, ticking over lovely. No nasty horrible noises on the front end. Ticking over beautiful. Right, so that's the valve clearance job done on this, other than putting the tank back on the seat and the side panels. We're not going to do that because we're going to carry on doing the air filter. We've got oil filter, what else? We've got oil, brakes, coolant to do on this one. So that's us done for the valve clearance job. So remember to like, comment, subscribe if you want to see the service done on this one, and hit the bell notification so you don't miss that video coming out. So we'll see you again on the next video.